With delay after delay, it almost seemed like getting Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 into theaters was the real impossible mission. But it's almost here, and it's sure to wow franchise fans with some big swings. Dead Reckoning Part 1 was supposed to release on July 23, 2021. Then it was moved to November 19, 2021. It was then delayed again to May 27, 2022, and then to September 30, 2022. After briefly being set for July 14, 2023, it was finally moved forward to July 12, 2023, which is hopefully where it will stay. All the release date shuffling has to do with the coronavirus pandemic, which majorly affected filming for the Dead Reckoning movies. Variety reported that production was shut down in February 2020. In December 2020, after production resumed, Tom Cruise famously lost his cool when some people on the set weren't following COVID protocols. Deadline notes that the film's release date was also affected by Top Gun: Maverick, with Paramount Pictures bumping Dead Reckoning Part 1 to make way for Pete Maverick Mitchell and his fighter jets. It seems like the July 2023 release date for the first part will stick, with Part 2 set to follow on June 28, 2024. The makers of Dead Reckoning Part 1 have done a pretty good job of keeping the story under lock and key. That said, it does seem like the stakes will be huge, possibly existentially huge. Henry Czerny's Eugene Kittridge tells Ethan Hunt,
"Your days of fighting for the so-called greater good are over."
Variety has reported that the first film will end with a pretty massive cliffhanger, and writer-director Christopher McQuarrie told the Light the Fuse podcast that Dead Reckoning refers more to the events of the second film than the first. So it seems that the first installment will be setting up some major stakes for the second. It also seems like things will get pretty emotional for the characters, such as Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa Faust and Simon Pegg's Benji Dunn. McQuarrie explained to The Hollywood Reporter, "When we went into making Fallout, I said to Tom Cruise, I really want to make this more of an emotional journey for Cruise's character Ethan Hunt. Going into this, I said, I want to take what we learned from Fallout and apply it to every character in the movie. I want everyone to have an emotional arc." When it comes to casting talented actors, the Mission Impossible movies spare no expense. After all, they're helmed by the biggest movie star alive, Tom Cruise. Dead Reckoning Part 1 will see the return of Simon Pegg as tech wizard Benji Dunn, Rebecca Ferguson as the deadly Ilsa Faust, and Ving Rhames as hacker Luther Stickle, the only character who's appeared in every Mission Impossible film aside from Ethan. Vanessa Kirby, who previously appeared in Fallout, is also coming back as the notorious White Widow. Henry Czerny will also return as Eugene Kittridge, who was in a rather explosive scene in the original Mission Impossible film.
"I can understand you're very upset."
"Kittridge, you've never seen me very upset."
As for newcomers, Dead Reckoning Part 1 will star Hayley Atwell of Agent Carter fame, Pom Klementieff from the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, and Carrie Elwes from The Princess Bride. You can also expect to see legendary character actor Shea Whigham, Mark Gatiss of Sherlock, Indira Varma of Game of Thrones, and beloved comedian Rob Delaney. Isai Morales, who you may recognize as Camino del Rio from Ozark, or Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez from NYPD Blue, will star as the film's big bad. The Mission Impossible movies have boasted some true auteurs, such as Brian De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, and Brad Bird. Indeed, until Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, each installment had been helmed by a different filmmaker. Starting with that fifth film, directing duties have gone to Christopher McQuarrie, who has directed every installment since. McQuarrie and Tom Cruise evidently have a great rapport. In addition to directing the star on 4 Mission Impossible movies, McQuarrie also oversaw the actor on Jack Reacher and helped write Edge of Tomorrow, Valkyrie, and Top Gun: Maverick. Before becoming one of Cruise's key collaborators, McQuarrie was probably best known for writing The Usual Suspects. And with the man sitting in the director's seat again, we have ridiculously high hopes for both Dead Reckoning movies. We are sure that McQuarrie and Cruise will be able to scale those high hopes with ease. Yes, we love the chemistry between Ethan Hunt and his IMF buddies. And yes, the fight scenes are always amazing, but we also love all the espionage and intrigue and realistic face masks. But come on, the main reason we're all so crazy about the Mission Impossible franchise is because of the absolutely wild stunts Tom Cruise pulls off. The franchise has continually upped the intensity and the danger of these stunts. with the star putting himself in harm's way for fans' enjoyment. We know Part 1 will feature an epic train crash, and thanks to photos taken at the production site, it's clear Cruise will be on top of the old-timey locomotive at some point during the scene. Cruise will also jump off the side of a cliff while riding a motorcycle. Speaking with Empire Online, Cruise explained this was an incredibly dangerous stunt, saying, "If the wind was too strong, it would blow me off the ramp. Or if I departed in a weird way, we didn't know what was going to happen with the bike. I had about 6 seconds once I departed the ramp to pull the chute, and I don't want to get tangled in the bike." It reportedly took Cruise months to prep for the scene.
We've been working on this for years.
The two-part Dead Reckoning had a rough start due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which stalled production for a few months after it began in Italy in February 2020. Cruise and his team managed to reunite in the UK after being granted special permission to continue filming. But production wouldn't officially begin again until September. According to director Christopher McQuarrie's Instagram, they soon shot the train fight sequence in Norway before going back to Rome. Part 1 then journeyed to London, Yorkshire, Birmingham, and eventually the Middle East. Filming wrapped in September 2021. By March 2022, Part 2 had begun filming and soon returned to Longcross Studios in England. Filming in the UK would conclude by the end of the year, and soon Cruise and the gang returned to Norway. Production reportedly took place in South Africa and Malta as well. According to Variety, the crew of Dead Reckoning Part 2 returned to the coast of Italy to film aboard the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier for scenes which promised to be an exciting addition to the Mission Impossible story. The production continued well into 2023. In March, The Guardian reported that the production was denied helicopter landings in Svalbard, Norway, due to the local wildlife. Ever since J.J. Abrams directed Mission Impossible 3, his production company, Bad Robot Productions, has been heavily involved in the series. Though Abrams himself declined to direct any of the sequels, he has remained involved as a producer. From Ghost Protocol to 2018's Fallout, Abrams and Bad Robot served Ethan Hunt and the IMF team faithfully, but the company isn't involved in Dead Reckoning Part 1. Though Abrams hasn't commented on Dead Reckoning specifically, there's an interesting behind-the-scenes reason why. In 2006, Bad Robot signed an exclusive contract with Paramount Pictures for features. Working alongside Paramount to produce exciting flicks, the Mission Impossible series clearly fell within Bad Robot's purview. But in November 2018, only months after the release of Mission Impossible Fallout, Deadline reported that Bad Robot planned to break from Paramount and pursue other projects and partnerships. It wouldn't be long before Abrams and his company signed a 5-year deal with Warner Media that covered everything from movies and television to video games and other digital media, keeping Abrams from any involvement in future Mission Impossible sequels. The Mission Impossible franchise was revived back in 1996 with the first feature film, directed by Brian De Palma. It was actually a continuation of the 1966 television series, with a key plot point being Jim Phelps, the main character of the TV series, now played by Jon Voight instead of Peter Graves, turning on his former agency.
Morning, Mr. Phelps.
The movie franchise really took off after the third film, which humanized Ethan in a way previous installments failed to, and gave him something, or rather someone, worth fighting for. The franchise then took a distinct turn upon writer-director Christopher McQuarrie's involvement, which began partway through the fourth film, Ghost Protocol, and solidified with Rogue Nation. From what we can tell, the two-part Dead Reckoning is the conclusion to the story that McQuarrie has slowly been developing since he joined the franchise in 2011. While the first 3 films were largely standalone stories, McQuarrie's chapters have consistently built upon one another. Events from Ghost Protocol impacted Rogue Nation, and Fallout directly followed the previous film. With Dead Reckoning, the plot is currently under wraps, but it wouldn't be surprising if the Syndicate or the Apostles return in some form, just like the other characters that McQuarrie has introduced to the Mission Impossible world. Hayley Atwell is no stranger to the world of espionage. Atwell previously headlined the Agent Carter series for Marvel, which followed her titular character during the Cold War. She even hosts her own podcast alongside her Dead Reckoning co-star Vanessa Kirby and fellow MCU actor Sophia DiMartino, called True Spies, which covers the world of real-life spy stuff. So Atwell clearly understands the type of role that she's playing in Dead Reckoning Part 1. Christopher McQuarrie described her character, Grace, as a destructive force of nature when speaking to the Light the Fuse podcast in 2020. While that's not much to go on, it's clear that Grace is meant to be unlike any other character previously introduced to the world of the IMF. McQuarrie added, "The work that Atwell's done, the dedication she's shown, the focus, and quite frankly, her frightening talent with a knife, are all stuff that I'm very, very, very excited for people to see. It's a very different side of Hayley." After 2 films featuring Sean Harris as the former MI6 operative, Solomon Lane as Ethan Hunt's nemesis, the IMF team is set to take on a new enemy this time around. It's unclear if Lane will continue to be a part of the Mission Impossible story going forward, though it seems likely. But a new character, played by Esai Morales, is the driving force behind the dangers that Ethan must face in the 2-parter. The character, about whom little is known right now, was originally meant to be played by Nicholas Hoult, before the actor had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. How or if Morales' character relates to the Syndicate and the Apostles remains to be seen, but it's possible he has no allegiances whatsoever. It's possible that the IMF team won't learn anything about their mysterious adversary in Dead Reckoning Part 1, but here's hoping that we find out just who this mystery man is before Part 2. Mission Impossible 3 was a game-changer for the franchise. Not only did the film introduce Simon Pegg's Benji Dunn, but it also gave Ethan Hunt an emotional motivation for his world-saving excursions. But Michelle Monaghan's Julia Meade didn't stick around long after the 3rd film, effectively disappearing from the franchise save for a quick cameo at the end of 2011's Ghost Protocol. It's implied that she and Ethan remained happy and together off-screen, at least until 2018's Fallout.
This is my husband, Eric. This is...
Rob Thorne, Dr. Rob Thorne. I worked with Julia.
at Mass General.
Upon Julia's return in Fallout, it becomes clear that she has remarried and Ethan has kept tabs on her from afar. Though he still loves her, he's been forced to move on due to his world-saving work with the IMF, which leads to his newly budding romance with Ilsa Faust. Nevertheless, Julia proves vital to the climax of Fallout, helping Luther defuse a bomb and foil Lane's plans. Afterward, Ethan and Julia part ways once again, now with closure. The end of Fallout makes it unlikely for Julia to return, since both she and Ethan have officially moved on. The series seems to have refocused its love story on Ethan and Ilsa moving forward. Writer-director Christopher McQuarrie has been slowly reintroducing elements from past Mission Impossible installments into his overarching narrative for years. For example, Vanessa Kirby's White Widow is the daughter of Max from the 1996 film. It's clear that Mission Impossible is attempting to build a cohesive story that connects to everything that's come before. One key returning element is former IMF director Eugene Kittridge, played by Henry Czerny, who hasn't appeared since the first film. So what has he been up to over the past 27 years? Kittridge was eventually succeeded by Alec Baldwin's CIA director Alan Hunley, but it's never explained on screen what happened to Kittridge in the meantime. Czerny revealed that he came up with his own backstory for Kittridge following the events of the first movie, telling Slash Film, "I decided that he'd been to all the agencies on some level or another, had a good idea now of how the game is played and what his place is in this mechanism of national intelligence." Ethan schooling Kittridge on who the mole really was and catching the mole was the springboard to 25 years of Kittridge going through different agencies, so he wouldn't be schooled again. Cruise has played Ethan Hunt for nearly 30 years, but he still seems to love it. He continually pushes the limits of what stunts he can pull off in each new installment. Not only does he star, but Cruise also serves as a producer on every single Mission Impossible film. Initial reports announcing Dead Reckoning reported that the 2-parter is meant to be a final send-off for Cruise's most prolific character. But the actor himself has refused to comment on whether Dead Reckoning Part 2 will be his final mission. Outside of an official confirmation from Cruise himself, everything is pure speculation. While a 2-part Mission Impossible epic certainly seems like a setup to retire the Ethan Hunt character, Cruise could very well return. Whatever the cause, the partnership between Cruise and McQuarrie remains strong. The two have worked together on more than 10 different features, making it fairly likely that they'll reunite in some capacity in the future.